Hey guys, so today I wanted to record a video where I watched through the Witcher Netflix behind the scenes documentary style video that was just put out on Netflix. It's about a 30-minute long little behind the scenes footage of the making of the Witcher Netflix, where I think some of the showrunners, the creators, some of the actors just talk about what went into making the Witcher Netflix show. It's not really like reaction worthy. I think it's probably a lot of pretty straightforward stuff. I've not actually watched it yet, so I waited till I could record it and just kind of watch through it and share my thoughts on what exactly is in this little behind the scenes, and just kind of give my own commentary as well. I think it's pretty cool to get more Witcher content, especially with the Netflix show, kind of seeing what their inspiration for a lot of the show was, and kind of get a little more insight on everything that went into making the show itself. I don't normally watch these kinds of things. I really only watch them for shows or movies that I'm really invested in, and this is definitely one of those shows that I feel invested in enough to watch the behind the scenes footage. So let's go ahead and get into it and see what they have to say about making the Witcher Netflix show. All right, so 30 minutes or 32 minutes of making The Witcher. Let's get started. Tense music playing. I will not make annoying commentary, I promise. Dramatic music playing. Okay, I'll stop, I swear.
My initial interest in The Witcher came from a chance experience with The Witcher games. And then I heard that Netflix were making a show, and so
okay, let's listen.
I hunted down the opportunity.
Let's listen to what he actually has to say, and not just like scream and screech over the fact and fangirl over the fact that Henry Cavill is speaking. I'm gonna actually pay attention to what he's saying. Sorry, we're gonna have to restart this.
Witcher came from a chance experience with The Witcher games. And then I heard that Netflix were making a show, and so I hunted down the opportunity to play Geralt. And when I'd spoken to had my first meeting with Lauren, she had mentioned that it was based on the books. The books I absolutely loved, and they are an extraordinary source of a wonderful story.
So I think we all kind of, or a lot of people already knew this, that Henry Cavill is in fact a fan of the Witcher games, and then he also went ahead and read all of the books. And it just, that always brings me such joy to know that he really appreciated the story, and he appreciated the world that Andrzej Sapkowski made before even getting into this. He was already passionate about it, so like that just solidifies the choice, in my opinion.
It is really fascinating. He traveled all over the world as a traveling salesman, and he started to write the original short story of The Witcher and submitted it to a magazine, and it got published. But he had never intended for it to take hold the way that it took hold.
That's another interesting thing about this show, is they definitely consult the author, Andrzej Sapkowski, a lot. And it is really interesting to think about him as an author, that he had I bet when he started writing The Witcher, like Lauren Hissirch says here, when he wrote it as like a short story for a magazine, he had no idea it was going to take off the way it did, to get a highly successful video game series, and now a Netflix show. Like, that's gotta be crazy for him as an author to experience all of this. But nonetheless, it's great that they included him in the, the thoughts and the inception of this show itself.
It's a harsh yet relatable world with some extraordinary characters in it.
Man, he gets it. Henry Cavill gets it, man. That is the exact thing that appealed to me about The Witcher to begin with, is that it is a dark fantasy, harsh world with the cool, like the most amazing characters in it. To me, the characters are what makes the show, or what makes the books, what made the games. More than anything for me was the characters in this world. It wasn't like this magical, whimsical universe, which it is. It has a lot of fantasy and everything in it, but it was the characters in it that really made it for me.
Can I tell all three of these stories at the same time and not have it be too confusing?
It's a little confusing.
It's interesting because I do think that television audiences are really savvy now. And
we're savvy, but not that savvy.
We have that on our side. We do jump through time a lot, but I think it's an exciting journey for fans and for even audiences that have never seen The Witcher before.
I think, Lauren Hissirch makes a good point here. I think for me, one of the biggest complaints about the show itself is that the timeline is really confusing and it doesn't make sense. For me, it was actually really interesting because I was already a fan of the series. And for me, it was interesting trying to figure out how the timelines were working as I was watching. So I was like, okay, we're watching it right now in Geralt's story. And then we see Ciri, and then we see Yennefer. But the Yennefer stuff I know happened way before. So, I was trying to piece it together watching it for the first time ever. I guess it could be interesting for people who have never watched before and they are, trying to figure it out, but probably a lot harder. And I think that's one thing they didn't completely take into thought, was that for people who are brand new to the series, and that's one of the number one complaint I've heard from people who are brand new to the series, is that they were so confused by the timeline. So I think they could have put a little more into that to make it more accessible for new people. But for people like me and, maybe some of you watching who are already familiar with the series, it wasn't that difficult.
The Witcher, and there are certain things, that are not necessarily described in the scripts. We would run those things by Tomek and his team to make sure that we were staying true to the source material.
That's pretty cool. I know, again, a lot of complaints that people had, a lot of the diehard people who are really like those purists about, not taking things from, or not making it extremely true to the books. I very much appreciate that they did put this much thought into the source material, and it wasn't just like, oh hey, we want to take this idea of The Witcher and just do whatever the heck we want with it. That's clearly not what they had in mind here for the show. They were trying their best to take creative liberties for things that were not exactly in the books, but try to stay as true to the source material as possible.
When you get assigned a script, it's very exciting because, oh, I'm dealing with this story. Great, I'm dealing with this story. When I got Law of Surprise, people were like, get that one, because it is tough to explain.
Yeah, Law of Surprise.
Law of Surprise is as old as mankind itself.
Me too. For all of the time. It took me such a long time to fully understand what the Law of Surprise even meant. When I read it in the books, I was like, okay, this is like some weird code, but it just, I don't know, the way the book explains it sometimes is not exactly that clear. So yeah, explaining that, like, that whole code in a show and how that affects the universe can be a rather tricky one to do.
With the story is
Anya!
Focused on the humanity and all those
Yay!
human struggles.
True
One
that.
of the things that was most interesting to me is the women in the books.
Yeah!
They're very, very strong women.
Yes, they are.
That are surrounding Geralt, the protagonist. And I asked Andrew, I said, for books written during the 80s, I'm really surprised that the women are so strong. And he said to me, you've never met my mother, have you?
Yeah, like I said, one of my favorite things about The Witcher is the characters, and The Witcher does an amazing job creating the coolest female characters ever that I look up to. I've based my D&D characters off of them. I'm so inspired by so many of the badass females that are created in the Witcher universe. And yeah, the show does a great job portraying that as well. The books do, and the games do as well. Like, oh my god, there's so many cool characters.
Undertaking to try and find an actress that can really embody a character like Ciri, just because it comes from such lore, but also it's such an important character. There's so much that Ciri brings. Ciri is this world.
Yep.
She's the key for almost.
She
every
is.
character.
The story is
that everyone, that brings everyone together.
Kahir gets it, man. The actor who plays Kahir gets it. It's the story is all about Ciri, really. Like, Geralt is the main character of The Witcher, but the story is about Ciri. She is the center of the whole story.
The books, and we found all of the places where Andrew had talked about these characters' pasts, and then we wove those things together into a sort of new story for both Ciri and for
Yeah.
Yennefer, to
So
make sure that
this
we're
is
really digging into their backgrounds. Because
this
to me, find the character, learn the character, and then see how they change when they meet one another. And that's
Yep.
the most exciting part.
I think, yeah, that's exactly what they did in the show. And, people talk about it. Some people liked it, some people hated it. But ultimately, they were taking what they knew about the characters' backgrounds and just expanding on it. And, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Some are from there, some are created by magic, and others, even though they're monsters, or considered monsters, are from a different place, or multiple different places.
Yep.
And they probably view mankind
As the monsters.
just as much as monsters as we view them.
Yep. That's the whole thing about The
That's also
Witcher.
something called the conjunction
Conjunction
of
of
the spheres.
spheres, yeah.
It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It is.
And this is where they talk
a
about,
bunch
like, the
of different
origin,
dimensions
which
smashing into each other and changing the world as we know it.
they're clearly the showrunners. Find it very interesting. They're very into the origin of the Witcher universe. Like they're you know, creating a whole separate show, The Witcher Blood Origin. They seem to be very much fascinated in the origin of the universe of The Witcher, which I think is pretty cool that they're really into that and want to explore that even more and talk about it here.
Plus a lot of high fashion and another sort of idea that
The
I brought into it
costuming
is using fabric manipulation,
is on
which
point for this
kind
show.
of, at the moment, quite a high fashion
Yep.
relevant technique, but it has actually been used throughout history, which relatively means just sort of pleating, draping, smocking, different ways of creating flat fabric into a textured fabric.
They did an
without the
amazing
addition,
job.
say, of like adding trims or sort of any kind of like an addition. So it creates sort of an architectural shape and visually creates an interesting surface
Yeah.
to the costume.
It's cool to hear them talk about this
As far
stuff.
as
It
the
really
world goes,
is.
the costumes and the
I
set,
love the costuming that they did.
feels to
I think that's what they're all after.
At least everybody is really woke in this, you know?
What we are doing here is a very, very heavy focus on emotions and relationships. I think it's just beautiful. And
At
all
least
those
they're not
things are in
tone
the
deaf to
books,
the
and they
great
are
themes in The
very
Witcher.
important in the books, but I think we are giving it even more attention and we are bringing it into a different level.
Beautiful scene.
one of the
Where's
great
my
elements,
tissues?
of course.
So the way Henry does the humour,
It's yeah.
brings his humour, because he has a giggle about him, he has a tickle about him. Very much.
Oh,
Everyone loves a white knight, but a white knight with
Swoon.
a dry and slightly off sense of humor is,
we all
is
just
more
love him?
enjoyable to watch and to play.
I've watched.
How do you
some
not
of
love
them,
him?
Some of their scenes, and I think there's definitely a bit of a. I always say this. There's definitely a bit of a Shrek and Donkey relationship going on.
even Siri knows the
Be
memes.
honest. It's like ordering a pie and finding it has no filling.
I remember the email coming in about 24 hours before the audition,
Aw.
panicking so
I love you,
so
Joey Baby.
strongly because I realized how fantastic the role of Jaskier really was.
Yes,
My
he knows.
sister at the time, she said, how are you doing? What's going on? There's something a little bit different about you today. And I said, yeah, have a read of this character. And her response was, Joey, are we in a dream that you're having? Because this is so perfect.
He does.
Incredible neck.
He does do a great job. He fits it so well because it's like at times, yes, Dandelion in the books and in the game can be really annoying and irritating, but like it's like a lovable annoying. And so I think Joey Beatty as Jaskier does this like lovable annoying so well.
Quality to this song that we really
Oh,
wanted.
this
It's
is them
just
talking about
travel
Toss a Coin
across this
song.
land to be reminiscent of those folk songs of the days of yore. There's a Celtic twang to it, but also there's a slightly
Yeah.
poppy catch.
It is a good
It's
mix.
A fantastic thing for Jaskier to be able to bring to the continent and for the composers to bring to the show is that it is an exercise in PR.
It is an exercise in PR.
Riviera immediately notices it. He says,
That's not how it happened.
Yeah. But that's a
As you never
bard.
found respect.
That's how bards do it, yo.
respect doesn't make history.
Heck to
I
the
think he
yeah.
understands people
So great at exercise in
in
PR.
in a different way to Geralt. He understands that in order to make your way in this world, sometimes you've got to fudge the edges a little bit.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty.
I don't know. Has this song gotten old for anybody yet? It's been like 9 months since the show came out. Actually, it's been like, yeah, it's been about like 9 months, 10 months.
Flavors in the action. We brought on a fight coordinator, Wolfgang. who
Choreography
has
is
come
on
to
point.
help us, with some of the fights that are early on in the season.
He's a positive witcher. Oh, that's so adorable.
That's
awesome.
To have Henry as our Geralt.
Aww.
He brings that quiet resolve and that natural strength, obviously, that he has. He does all his own stunts, which is a producer's worst nightmare. If it's Geralt on the screen,
That's
him.
awesome. That's awesome.
He will probably have 10 days of training to do those fights. And
Wow.
it's interesting.
That's amazing.
What the fight team will do is to really
So much
lean
that goes into this.
Henry's strengths. I mean, he's a huge, strong person, and it's really interesting when you lean into people's, kind of natural skills, how much more believable something looks. But yeah, it's about 10 days of rehearsals for a fight that we'll shoot in 2 days that will be on screen for about 2 minutes.
It's crazy.
And
Yeah.
the idea is to really have great set pieces.
It's always like so easy to forget for people. Like it's like put so much perspective onto things. Like you can complain and bitch and moan about a show and how they didn't portray it the way you wanted it to, but you just think about like all the amount of time and sweat and love and tears that's put into a show like this. Like 10 days to train for the Renfrey fight scene. That's insane. I think this was actually a pretty cool little glimpse of what went into the show. It very much wasn't like this is how we shot these scenes and this is like how everybody interacted on the set. It was just a straight up interview style, but really getting deep into what everybody was thinking about the show. And clearly they're all pretty on point with their thoughts about this universe. And I don't know, it's very refreshing to see that all of these people really care about the lore of the world and care about the characters, and it's not just some fun project that we're gonna make a show based on this game and books and not really putting a lot of thought into it. Because that can happen sometimes, there's really bad renditions of shows and movies and games out there. But they clearly put a lot of thought and passion and interest into it. And that's what's most important to me. And that's why I think I support this show so much. And like I said earlier, you can say whatever you can about how everything was portrayed. Sure, it's great to have criticisms of things, but watching these kind of documentary style making ofs, I really think helps put into perspective a lot of different things. So it's pretty refreshing, and I would definitely recommend giving it a watch. It's very short, only 30 minutes. You should probably check it out if you want to get a little bit more. So that's all for me with this video. I hope you guys liked it. I'm curious to see your thoughts as well and what you thought about this little documentary, what you thought about the show in general. I'm always happy to talk about it. And whenever there's new Witcher-related content out there, I will be on it. I'll be making videos and talking about it and sharing my thoughts. So there will be more to come. Stay tuned. Thanks, everybody.